So, welcome. Unreadable abstract. So first, as Marcus said, this talk is very experimental. I was ready to talk about hash collisions, and he changed that. So the alternate talk is an attempt at making graduates' lives less miserable and sharing the countless mistakes I did, but they didn't fit in the author cover. And again, it's the slides, I finished them 2 hours ago. I started them in April. They are very experimental. If you think something is missing, please come to me. I did a similar talk, but for older people at HackPra last year. And there was a lot of very deep feedback and personal. So later, or maybe in the forest of Schäferhof or something. Anyway, you can reach to me later, and I will try to answer further questions. I just try to come up with only 100 slides for now. So your life so far was probably something like, I'm trying to remember being a student, like a long tunnel, a long succession of tests and grades. And the goal was, as my parent told me, get a diploma, and then, we'll get a diploma first. And after years of effort, the end of the tunnel is near, and now what? And the plan at the time for me was find a perfect job, work and follow your dear manager's wishes forever, and then retire rich, famous, and happy. And do you believe in Santa too? Wait, if you follow the orders of someone again and again and again, is that just another succession of tunnels, which is a bit like traveling by train in Switzerland, but I mean, here it's more painful. It's less beautiful. And you might want to escape and to change that. And at least, well, it took me some time to understand that, but I will explain. It's more like what I felt is like, yes, at last I have my diploma, and suddenly, exactly like this scene in Indiana Jones, oh, fuck, what's going on now? And it really was like this. Goals, like Indiana Jones, survive, and be happy came much later. But again, I was very clueless, so I hope none of you is that clueless. I hope you all know what to do, and therefore it would be just funny for you to be presented by someone so stupid. So, about the speaker, I'm currently a reverse engineer at Google, which some people could think is a dream job, and last year I had the Pwnie Award of crypto. So, 2 disclaimers. First, these are not the views of any of my employers. So I've been a career of, I will talk later, but I've been only at Google for 3 years. So don't think that this all applies to Google. And most of the things actually don't apply to Google here. And again, for the Pwnie Award of crypto, actually, I'm very bad at crypto. My contribution was on the file format perspective, which is actually important. So I was lucky. I don't do any crypto, but I was able to help, and with my specialty, which is file crafting, and which is what Marcus didn't want me to present today. So I studied at university, and I think I did a lot of mistakes, and I should probably hide in shame, but instead I'm here to share them, and hopefully it can help someone else, or maybe convince you that, oh, I don't suck that much. Age-wise, I'm actually twice older than a student, and it still represents, so a student life ago, I was a student, and I'm at half career. So there is still a student life for me as a professional. And my son is half a student. He's just started gymnasium. I mean, he's a bit late, but yeah. So I have someone who's becoming a student, and I still remember a bit about being a student and the consequences of that. If you're watching this, a bit like my previous keynote, so the slides are pretty on a neutral tone, but in the video, in the recording, I will give a lot of personal examples. So it's the tone and the examples are very different, but the examples will be different. The slides will be boring. Like I explain what happened with my son and whatever, you know, I think. I come from a multicultural career and family. So at home we speak 3 to 4 languages. I even work in a 5th language, in a 5th country. And I worked independent in a very small company and in big company. And I tried to do a thesis initially, but yeah, that didn't go well. So I have some, I cannot say I've seen it all, but at least I have more variety than, for example, I was talking with someone yesterday, and he said, I did 1 job interview in my life, and he's still doing the same job. Lucky him, and not exactly the same for me. And again, I will do, probably I may say stuff that hurts, or you think you make fun of you, but I don't want just to give popular opinion. I don't want to give stupid illusions or hype. I'm using only my own experience. So disclaimer, sorry, I cannot only rely on my own experience. And this is not a talk like to say, I mean, work in an American company, you hear a lot of American style, how to be a winner. I'm definitely not. And we are not going to learn how to be a winner. And to be honest, I more feel like an idiot, and also I can barely code. So the thing is, when I read a code, I think, like in assembly, that the variables, I don't think that the values of the variable could stay the same. Like you change register, you know, you use EAX all the time. So why would the variable keep the same? I have a weird mentality, and it's actually preventing me to code quite correctly, I would say, even variable naming. So not to look good. But at least I remember that during the whole of my studies, I always remembered trying to look for answers, like why I'm here, what's the reason, why is it useful, and I didn't have these answers. So if you can work and just do your job fine and not having such questions, then I envy you. I mean, I was on that, and I was looking for answers that I never found when I was studying. So another thing is that, okay, I used the examples of Google and Pwnie award, and you could say maybe you think, hey, Google suck and Pwnie suck, or Google is awesome and Pwnie is awesome. That's your own judgment. But I think that this is what you see of me, but in the end, what matters for me is inside. And I want here to talk not about these symbols, these facts of arguable value, but really about ourselves. Don't get it wrong. This knock, even though I'll say maybe some very strong things like diploma suck or whatever, don't get it wrong. It's not about hating or rejecting. It's more about understanding, assuming, and becoming better or finding a better path for yourself. So not just to be mad, but actually looking for solutions. And often, in all the situations I experience, something that helped me to survive, I know it's not very positive altogether, but it's going to get worse, no worries, is that forgive what happens. Sometimes there are always two views from the same events. And forgive people, you'll spare some energy for yourself. And also, before actually blaming them, just try to think of their own perspective, but do not forget, because do not forget the small Lego you stepped in, and now try to improve things. Spät. So, on education. This is how I felt about education, especially, we'll see later, but InfoSec security a university didn't exist when I studied. So we all fall by molds. I mean, it's natural. Our environment, cultural, family, and school teaches us something. And it's normal, that's how it works, and it's good to educate some people. But now, you may not have to follow these guides anymore, but it's hard to realize that because we don't feel in jail. It's just we were guided. But suddenly, at the end of diploma, you could say, oh, I have less guides. I don't necessarily have to guide. So here, this is Hamburg, one of the biggest railway yard in the world. And that's a lot of railway, but still, there's not so many choices. And this is how I see university. There are plenty of possibilities, but not that many, especially if you have some weirdness like me. So, at school, failure was not an option. So when you're a child, when you're kindergarten, you learn by trying and failing, but school has no time for that. And now I know that because my eldest, who started gymnasium, at home I say practice, rehearse, fail all the time, and then he doesn't understand why at school he's only allowed not to fail before. Even if he understood his failure, it's too late and the mark is there, and he's judged on that. And the only whether he's good or not depends on the marks that he received. And so you must get it right before the next test. And that's actually quite limiting in a way of thinking. We'll see that later. So the usual values at school is that because you're a small environment, you worship the top. Because the group is small, you can easily say the top 3 of the class or the top 5 or 10 is this. Then you can praise the common values of all the top 20 or the 50% better, like, oh, they all use Emacs. Therefore, VI users suck. This kind of thinking. It's a joke, but yeah, depends. And of course, the bottom, even if the bottom could be happy just to have barely good marks and just do something very nice on the side, as a group, it's like, hey, they are the worst. So suddenly they are flagged as being doing it wrong because they are the worst. And again, there is a lot of focus on easy success and pretend that people just did it alone, even if they rely on others or on resources or knowledge already existing, and especially media like instant wins. So like everything has to look easy when you present, when you point to one, it's like instant, yeah, hacked, finished. Another thing that is funny is that as soon as people appreciate what you look, then they assume you're famous. So it's funny because when you have someone extremely good but who's just doing that to one customer and doesn't want any visibility, I had a colleague, her sentences, the longest sentence that she ever said was 3 words, but usually her sentences was 1 word, but she was extremely good at reversing. And she didn't want people to know she was just doing her work. But people usually assume, because the usual way things work is that if you're doing something good, you must be famous, and therefore if you're not famous, you probably suck, which is actually wrong. And then there's the funny fact that as soon as you're famous, like people know me or something, then they assume I have money. And then they assume, because I have money, therefore I must wear impressive stuff. So sometimes it goes to extremes. Like once, one guy asked me, I mean, not German, he asked me, what's my car? Because what I was doing was awesome, therefore I must be rich, therefore I must have an awesome car. I mean, okay, in Germany it's probably right, but in France it's not. So again, and I've met some people who are totally unknown, who don't want to present anywhere, who are extremely good at what they want, and yet it feels odd initially because of the value of school promoting and everything. So we all have blinders, which means we all have our own experience, which also gives us a perspective, and no matter what, this doesn't give us the whole picture. It started, so basically, even if I give you an advice, it could be totally wrong. And it started for me, my parents were always convincing me not to do stuff about computers because they thought it's not the future. It worked well, right? And again, there's no reason to blame them, they have their own perspective. So, and what I'm doing now and living with and presenting about right now is something that my family told me was bad and that wasn't taught in university. So now think about it, and if there is something that you do that is not taught and your parents are telling you it's bad, it could be in a student's life, your life, like what you're proud of and what you earned your life with. So to be honest, I have a diploma that is totally useless, but I mean, that is not related because there was no InfoSec taught at university at the time. And on top of that, my parents were already against this kind of stuff because it was already with computers. So now think about it and you say, my parents don't like that, but actually I've loved that all the time. I finished this, I will see later, but you can use this diploma your diploma to do your career, which may not have something to do with InfoSec, so with computer security. And actually, in their 40s, like I know a few people I know one who actually stopped doing and started bakery. And why not? If that's what he actually loved from the beginning, think about it yourself, you know? It's not because your parents tell you it's good and you study it at university that it's your future and your happiness. Because in my case, it wasn't. And again, my advice could be totally wrong, so don't listen to me. But instead, I mean, okay, listen, but don't follow, and don't pretend, oh, Ange said that, so it's good, or this guy said that, so it's good, because it's on my own perspective. Of course, I'm biased because of what happened in my family. So, another thing, there I heard of a museum that is recent. Over Christmas, I learned how to program the Apollo computer, so from the 60s. So again, when I started to learn reverse engineering, it was on floppy of 300 kilobytes, 360 kilobytes. My hard disk was 20 megabytes, and I knew all the directories inside. And to propagate knowledge, there was no internet, so you would either, someone would print something, or you would call on a landline phone to get some knowledge, like the conversation. So you think I should belong in a museum, right? But now if you think your knowledge now in a student's life will be belonging in a museum. So can you build that future from that? Well, you can't. If you look at how recent these companies are, my current employer is here, some language is much younger than me, and I'm using them, or they might be, so maybe what you're learning now is totally irrelevant in the future. I mean, I started with those 3. I started with Windows 1. Now Windows 10 is killing, I mean, Microsoft tends to shoot itself in the foot now. So maybe for my kids, Windows will not, I mean, Linux is much more present than in the past. I mean, Linux didn't exist when I was born. Yeah, anyway. So just to put things in perspective, what you could be happy with may not exist even now. And my employer, even though it's quite famous now, just was created when I when I was in the university. So imagine there is a new company in Bochum right now that is like 10 employees. It's like, huh, funny. It might be the Google when you're just half career. So again, it's difficult to imagine because, of course, we cannot plan. And again, sometimes there is a lot of pride. We'll see that in the software we use in terms of, again, VI, Emacs, IDA, whatever. And this stuff could be totally belonging in a museum in a half career away from now. This is what I mentioned here. Pride creates unneeded friction. Sometimes you see people resentful regarding some stuff, and after some years, this technology becomes completely obsolete. So the pride that came from here was actually meaningless. For me, let's take a very different example. I'm French, proud of my food. I married a traditional Japanese. When I went the first time in Japan, my tongue was like, what the fuck? It's like, what is that? And I understood that all my proud of being French, of escargot, I mean snails, shark, whatever we eat in France, pigeons, horse, rabbits, the stuff we eat in France, suddenly was completely blasted because I was in a total different environment. And this is very good. This is when I was saying about what you don't understand what your values are when you stay. If you're German, okay, you probably like currywurst and everything, but it's suddenly when you go far at the other side of the planet that you realize, oh, I wouldn't do this or I wouldn't do that. And I see that because my kids start to make typical German jokes that the French wouldn't do. So suddenly there's like a clear distinction between both, even though both sides like sausage. I mean, so you discover more your values when you go out of them, and suddenly you understand what is so important for you and what was totally meaningless, like I was with French food. And before I was proud as a French, I say, I only eat French stuff. And you could say the same. Imagine the software you're the proudest of using now. It's like, no, I'm using Radari because, yeah. And it could be just obsolete or it could just be wrong, and there would be a part of the planet where people don't use it at all. Again, every time you have a value, I would say that there is probably a part of the planet, somewhere on the planet, that this value is totally wrong, and a value that is totally much better. So, for example, I worked in Japan, and in Japan, if you actually need help, people will not. You disturb the group. So, if you're carrying a child, no one will help you because you're already a hindrance, and it's a shame for you. But on top of that, they will just tell you that it's noisy and they will not help you at all. If you are in Ireland, or the opposite, we are in Ireland, we're in a restaurant, and our son starts to wake up in the buggy, and the waitress says, hey, I have nothing to do, and she goes out in the street with the buggy, and she brings him back asleep. We arrive from Japan in Ireland, the kids are already completely tired, and we are unloading from the shuttle. A woman behind, with the SUV behind the bus stops. We don't know her. She starts to take our luggage in her SUV, and she tells us, I will drive to where you live. She doesn't know us. We don't know her. She didn't expect anything back. She just say, I can help you, and that's all that she wanted. So when you say, no, you don't do this, there could be a part of the world or a community or a company that could say, this is totally wrong, and the company they say, oh yeah, we do much better, or much worse. But sometimes they don't say it that way. So just that all your values, when you go in different environment, whether it's country or people or companies, they could be totally wrong. Like one of my employer, I didn't have access to the whole source of the software we were using for security reasons. So I couldn't find bugs in that. And even though it was in their PE parsers, I couldn't review it, even though the people who had access to the source were coming to me and asking me questions about the PE parser. But for security reasons, I couldn't read the source, and if I wanted to debug something, I just had to open the DLL in a debugger of the official distribution. And yet I was in the company for security reasons. Is that a good practice? Is that the worst? It's up to you. And on the other hand, another of my employer, people had access to the whole source of everything, including deprecated software from the DOS era. But they were totally forbidden to interfere on one of these sources, even to fix a bug, because who do you think you are? You only belong to this team. You don't belong to ours. So even though in one case the source was totally open and the other was totally closed, you have always extreme in culture, in companies or society. And on the other hand, it's also important to understand that if I say something like, I don't know, PHP or JavaScript, maybe you'll be instantly depressed. And if I say something like CTF, you'll be instantly happy. So I think it's also good to recognize that sometimes people see that it's negative to say, oh, I don't want to work on this. But on the other hand, if your motivation is your fuel, it's very important to realize, to reject stuff where you know you won't be efficient. But again, it's about listening to yourself. And no one can answer that question for you. So before we start a bit more about the process, I will introduce a few non-obvious things. And the most important test, firstly, is a correct level in English. So usually it doesn't apply to German people, but it saddens me to see some people older than me in France are still unable to speak English. And it's not, and when you say you should speak English, they are like, mais je suis français, but I'm French. But it's not about this, it's just having I think it generally helps being comfortable. And now that you still have a lot of time, if you're just near the end of your diploma, then I think it helps. But again, this probably applies to culture. Usually German people have a good level of English. My son learns it in class 1, so first class of school. Attitude. In one of my employer, there was a guy with a bully attitude, totally playing with fire, so not respecting the rules and being an asshole. There is a limit for everyone. And I will not say what happened, but basically, even if you fix that person and not respecting the rule, no one will care. So the thing also, it's sad, I think it's sad to see people my age or older who still behave like not crediting others, just trying to cheat and just grabbing, like forgetting what people did and this kind of, even my son would look at me and say, Dad, seriously. But people in their 40s still do that. And to be honest, it sucks. And I know that eventually they will pay back in a way or another. I don't want to enter into details, but if you think that, hey, I don't need to mention him and he didn't say anything, time will come. So karma is a bitch, and life comes at you fast, and sometimes in the worst way. Again, no more details, but it saddens me to see people older than me or my age still behaving like I would forbid my kids to. And again, it starts with the way you're thinking. It's not just the way you're doing, but when you say that person, if you say just neutrally this person, but if you say this stupid guy or this stupid Radary user, if you start to introduce qualifiers in your thinking, then you will think, it will become normal, and then it will become your own behavior. And then you will just think it's normal. And people may not say anything, they will say, hey, they don't care anyway. But people remember. They forgive, but don't forget. And eventually it becomes your destiny, and when it hits back, there's no one to cry for you. And again, some people say, I demand respect, but what they want is that they actually demand authority from others. They just say, hey, respect me, but it's like, just behave like my slave. And the good rule to know if you're a slave or not is like, would you like the roles to be swapped? Would you like to be told what you just said? So again, maybe it's obvious. I hope none of you is concerned by this. But life comes back at you if you don't, and it hurts. And sometimes, however you may feel about your diploma or your experience, is no excuse. And here, it's a real example of an ex-colleague who applied after leaving Google, and he was rejected because we had very bad luck with ex-Googlers in the past. And so basically, your diploma is no excuse. And I've known several people from the best school in France. I've known some people one of my colleagues, and he's very humble, and he would not even mention that he's from that school, even if it's prestigious. And on the other hand, I've known some totally arrogant asshole just having the same diploma. It's not an excuse. Arrogance only shows you're narrow-minded. It's okay to be insecure, but not being a jerk. And sometimes it's also funny when you have employees like who just behave as if they founded it from the beginning. It's like, hey, relax, man. You're just an employee, and you could be fired like anyone else. But the arrogance, sometimes people, yeah, it's weird. And another thing is I actually contributed to adding features to Gmail. So you can say, I'm an arrogant asshole, if you want. And again, what's a star? The people that really, the multiple Pwnies award people, or the very impressive people. And the most impressive persons I work with at Google or outside, they are totally humble, totally honest. They don't spend any time to try to impress people. They just speak as if they were a child who say, I did this, and it was fun. That's all. It's pure simplicity, not trying to impress. Especially one thing is that someone who may know a lot about something and totally ignorant about something else, and it's fine. So if suddenly you don't know something that I consider a basic fact, I will not find it weird, because there are probably stuff that, for example, I rediscovered that SSH port is 23. I had forgotten about this. You can probably have all inside, I don't know. But for me, it's not a general knowledge. I need to know. I know very little about Linux, about networks, about protocols. But it's not, you could say it's a reason to laugh, but then there are plenty of stuff that is obvious to the rest of the room and not you. So really, whenever I work with the most impressive people, I just felt like I was with my son who's building something in the playground. And again, it's not about forcing yourself to act, it's just about finding your own playground. What do you deeply love? And I remember when I was young, I was looking, well, okay, under DOS, at table, at FAT and sectors with hex editor. It was my playground, and I still like that. But it took me 20 years to 30 years to acknowledge that. So just remember what you deeply love, maybe, and maybe you will find some answers there. And it's really about finding your own playground. And again, when I say be yourself, it's not about rejecting. It's just about being honest with yourself. Of course, if you hate something, then it will not go well in the long run if you do it too long. But on the other hand, it's like, come on, I'm super, I hate this, and then in the end, you're just a useless hater. Okay, I keep talking, and everyone is silent except one person leave the room. You have any questions or anything? Or you can leave the room, I'm not looking. No questions? Sorry, just take a break. Health. So my son is like, he never needs a jumper, he's never cold until he is. I was like this. Like, health is for dumb people. I'm strong, I'm young, fuck it. But actually, eventually you realize that except for the top sickness like cancer, people are very shy about their sickness. And it's only when you have it that suddenly you hear that people, oh, I had it too. But you know, you have the top 10 of, again, as I said, we mentioned the top 10, even for sickness. And there are these sickness that you don't necessarily want to speak, and suddenly it feels like people are like, huh, really? Oh, come on, you must have done something wrong. It's probably your fault. I mean, this is the kind of thinking. But then when you have it, and you speak it with someone else, suddenly people are like, yeah, I had it too. So there's a like of kind of exaggerated strength of saying, no, I'm healthy. And in the end, suddenly you're not, and maybe you're shy or something. And there is this thinking, and I was like that, to think that I'm smart, I was educated and everything, therefore health is for stupid people. And then you have your first friend who's very sick or dead or something, or an accident, and then you realize it's not that easy. And suddenly, even there is the myth of burning out and working overnight. Yeah, you did. And then you realize you didn't work that well. And if you keep doing it for many weeks or months, then you realize, hey, I'm running out of energy. oh, I'm probably, you know, like people, everybody says that in the gaming industry, it's normal to sleep at work and whatever. And in the end, when someone burns out, dies or whatever, then, oh yeah, he was just a weakling. But internally, that's not how you think it works. And again, unlike what I was thinking, it's actually better to sometimes just think, this stuff sucks. So I was a student and I just was thinking, I don't need to buy myself a better light. And then I started to see my motivation and my whole emotion be going down. And I know maybe I feel like I look like a loser when I say that, but sometimes acknowledging that and just fixing that just for your own health, in secret, you don't mention people that you've been buying something for your own health, but actually it can be one of the best things you could do. So just spend some time to say, I could buy a better pillow, or I could get rid of the shoes that my mother-in-law gave me, or this kind of thing, and maybe you feel better. So again, there's no health credit, there's no heroic action in being burnout and working overnight if there's no benefit for that. I mean, that's not the goal, right? Whenever you see a movie, you don't say, wow, I hope that the people really didn't sleep for 3 months for this movie. You just want to watch a good result, and you don't care how they come up with it. So now let's see. What did you study for? So one of the first problems I had in school was I was trying to learn, and it didn't work. And my way, the usual way of reading a book and doing the exercise didn't work. And I understood, sadly too late, that I have a very visual mind, and I need to draw stuff, and I need to write stuff, and then I can learn. So basically, it was painful the whole studies until I realized that if I was drawing something on the side about the ideas or whatever, it would work better for me. So I don't know if it was what will work better for you, but it's just that reading a book and I don't know, after one paragraph, my brain is dead. Is it me? Is there anyone else in the room like this? Just try to find your own way, because in the end, once you know it, once you acknowledge it, it's like, hey, I open the book and then I start to draw. And this is how, then it will make it much easier, much more pleasant for me, because this is the way I work inside. I don't know why, but maybe if you have this problem too, it could help that you have, that you find, actually, that you learn differently than others. And again, people don't share this kind of thing, usually. Yeah. Diploma. What's a diploma? So first, a diploma is a privilege, but you don't realize that. It's like you're already in a part of the population. So I was discussing recently, if you want to go to any country without having the citizenship and everything, they will look if you're qualified. So basically, a diploma is an international standard that is recognized, but they don't care at this stage anymore if it's RUB or if it's or what your marks were. I remember I was proud of my diploma, I was proud of my grades, and then I go to the first interview, they say, okay, diploma, sure. It's like a key of paper, the door is open, so it's a privilege. This is why the people are saying, please come in, next candidate, but in the end, this is job zero without any experience. They don't care what your diploma, I mean, okay, unless you're in the area or maybe in Germany, but if you go outside, it's like, okay, you have a diploma of this, and this is enough. And if you want to emigrate to Japan, for example, your diploma will be a key that will automatically give you citizenship within 3 years or 1 year, depending on your experience and everything. So, and again, most people will not care about what was exactly studied in the diploma. So, for example, there are people doing security, and they did in the past musicology or biomechanics or physics, and now they are doing security. But if they love security from the beginning, and if they've been playing CTF, maybe they are actually better than some students that were in InfoSec courses before. So in the end, it just works as an equivalent, international equivalent, and what people actually studied after a couple of years of experience, it doesn't make any difference. How many years you studied for your diploma? 5 years, then after 5 years of work, this experience is not so relevant anymore. And if one of you is thinking, now I have this diploma of information security, but then I will move to music or something else, it's a perfectly good choice. Because this just works as equivalent. And anyway, people at some point don't care at all about what was written on your diploma. It's just the level, the name, the signature, that's all. They don't care about the grades and And yeah, the schools, and also, I don't know in the case of Bochum, but sometimes it also gives you some social network of former employees and everything. But I think nowadays it's not so relevant when you have the InfoSec community and the scene in general. But of course, if you go to very prestigious school, then you will go to employers who only hire people from that school. And this could be the opposite, as we saw for Google. Someone say, oh, if one company has been hiring people from Bochum and they were all very arrogant or incompetent, they will maybe just for that reject. Yeah, we had enough Bochum candidates in the past, so this could be a disadvantage. So another thing is that school and job market differs vastly. As I mentioned, there was no InfoSec courses at university when I did it. And you probably have, again, as I showed earlier, you have probably how many skills were you judged on during your courses? 10, 15? You probably have a lot more, and probably each of you has a unique one that no one else has in the room. And maybe that's important for you. Also, you probably don't need more skills. It's not about skills. It's just to understand your skills and what you like. Because again, like I was looking at Hex editor in the past, this was a skill without me knowing that it was, but just something I liked, my playground, and I didn't acknowledge that it could be my job. You may lack experience, but that's another problem. Experience can come. And again, another thing with the myth of focusing on the best people is that you don't need to be the best. You just need some skill. Is your local bakery the best in the world? We tend to always mention the top in the world, which company has the biggest market share worldwide and everything. But when it's time for a job and the local company just needs someone who does security, you just need to be the best available. And no, I don't mean you shouldn't try to be the best, but to be honest, you can't. Usually, the best person is the person who created the topic, and that's too late. And again, I remember with a colleague saying, we are too late. But yeah, I mean, it's true. We are all too late because we didn't create information security. So let's admit it and then move on. It's not because you won't be the best that you cannot try to be better than you are at the moment, and that you cannot be happy with a single employer, for example. Exactly like my friend yesterday, having a single employer in his life and still happy to do pen testing. Perfect. So I would suggest that you spend some time making an inventory of your skills, and maybe just not really your skills, but what you liked, and that maybe even isn't taught in school, or was taught in a different way, and that you had no time to try, but you were interested by. So I think, I remember one of my colleagues was like, what do I need to do reverse engineering? I think skills will come. Proper level of English, because that's bare minimum for communication. It sounds weird, but I still think a good attitude, because with a good attitude, you can trust people. When you can trust people, when they say, oh, it took too long, you don't think this person, oh, he probably was slacking off. As long as you have trust, then you can progress together. And understanding your skills, the likes and dislikes, which will make everyone easier for everyone to move without friction or with less friction, and spend a little time making your life more comfortable, because even we think we're all strong, it can actually change a lot of things in your life. And the rest, you can learn. Reverse engineering security is not about knowing, because if you knew, then you knew the solution in advance. When you have incident response, you don't know already in advance what the people did. It's security in general. Always start with, I don't know what to do. How can you exploit it? I don't know yet, but I will explore. So it starts like when you're an engineer and you should provide the software within some time, there is already, you must provide something in some time. After a week, there should be a new piece of software, a new API, a new function or something. In security, you are always, you could say, after 1 week, I don't know how this malware works. And you can say, I still don't know how this malware works after 2 weeks. And this is what people with standard forward job, people have a difficulty to understand. It's not specific to InfoSec, it's with security jobs in general. How did this person was killed? Don't know yet, still investigating. And sometimes investigation takes years, right? And then you could be an asshole and say, this detective or this polizei sucks. But this is not how it works. So security is a work where you need trust in others, trust in yourself, and there is always a state of unknown. And if by any chance you would say, hey, I already know how it works, then it's not a security problem. So this is, I know it's a permanent problem with people, just normal standard developer and managers, and like, how long will you take? If I give you 3 malware, how long will it take? And it's like, I don't know, I haven't looked at them. Come on, do your job. And then sometimes you have, of course, insecure managers who say, come on, do your job properly. You have 10 years of experience. You should know better. You know, when you open the stuff in IDA and suddenly IDA crashes, like, it's going to take long. But how can you explain that to your manager? So now let's find a job. So independent. So I worked a bit at independent. It's a very intense, very risky, and it requires dedication. But I kind of really enjoyed that, the fact that there was no bullshit, there was no, I felt naked in front of the person. It's like everything I was doing was, was with the person, with the customer. And I couldn't hype my way or in anything. So it was like totally honest and totally risky. So it's kind of, it was thrilling, but maybe not for everyone because there could be some problems. Degradation of social skills and so on. And stress on relationships, yes. Startup, I worked in startup, and for example, in a single day, you can really change a lot of things. So for example, we were using no source manager. So it was a time of Subversion, Git didn't exist yet. So I took Subversion, I wrote a manual in French for my colleagues. I did the official translation of the GUI so that my colleagues could use it. I set up a server. And so you say, but in a startup, so basically you have to be ready to do anything, right? But at least the benefit can be awesome in just one day of doing all this kind of shitty job. Shitty. You could say, this is not what I'm supposed to do. Hey, I'm a pen tester. I'm not here to set up a server and do a French translation. But at least the benefit is suddenly huge. And especially because there are few people, the impact is great. On the other hand, the ship might sink at any moment. And actually, the company had a loss of income. And suddenly they had to tell people, including me, sorry, no more money, bye. So yeah, the myth of startup and then you get rich and whatever, it could be the opposite. Oh yeah, I don't know the law in Germany, but at least in one of my employer, so you work and there is the guy behind you and he gets a call and he goes and then he's not here. And basically he had to go to HR. He was forbidden to go back to his, he was not fired, he was just let go. So he was not allowed to go back to his desk, so someone went and took his belongings, and he still had a month of allowance. So basically he had some money, but not even allowed to turn off his machine or close his windows or anything. And that's legal. So when you're thinking, oh, I'm employed and so on, in some companies, in some cultures, it wasn't like he had done something wrong, it was just a legal way to do something in some countries. Trust. Trust, I think, is important, but some people disagree. Big corporation, open space, meetings, culture that sometimes turn into a cult. The same code of conduct for thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, bureaucracy, politics, and territorialism. I think this diagram was shown when the new CEO of Microsoft came in. But it's not just Microsoft. Academia, don't get me started. But yeah, in theory, it's beautiful to do stuff for science. In practice, we'll see. So a few things to keep in mind. Every system can be gamed. It's tempting to take shortcuts. So in a football match, the final metric is scored goals, but you can game and fake pain, and that's unmeasurable. And then you can try to get a penalty with that. And then you have people who forgive but don't forget and who make fun of that. So if you don't know, that's a video of Cantona. It's pretty funny. So gaming and trying to cheat and get better in your company, I think it's an attitude problem, but as long as you're not punished for trying, people will still try. So hate the game and not the players. But every system can be game, whether it's soccer or company, promotion, and everything. And everything needs to be measured, right? Your bank account, your heartbeat, your body temperature, these are important metrics that everyone recognizes. However, sometimes the metrics are irrelevant. At some point in my work, it's still funny, I was measured by the amount of samples that were submitted on VirusTotal that would be detected already by my rules. So if I had a rule that was suddenly hitting on a shitload of samples uploaded to VirusTotal, then I would instantly reach 100% without doing anything. And if I was unlucky, it could be 0% from one way to the other. That rule was never reevaluated. Now, actually, I had a colleague who set a script to automatically do automatic rule, but he was just the script was just waiting for a key press so that he would release them throughout the day to reach his quota. And the manager knew about it. But the manager can show to his director, the problem with metrics is that the story is lost. The manager can show to his director that the metrics are rich. And so basically he's doing a good job of manager because his subordinates are reaching their quotas. And these metrics were totally bullshit. And on top of that, I mean, I could have, but again, I don't want to game the system. I could have just uploaded a lot of samples to VirusTotal on Sunday evening and reached my quota instantly. Maybe I should have, but I prefer to spend time on other things. Your mileage may vary. So I think, you know, it's like how many tennis balls can you put in a tube? And a lot of metrics can be very stupid and should be re-evaluated, like why people still think your bank account is a good thing, because that's still quite universal and accepted. You could object, but it's going to be hard to change it. Politics, if you think about it, politics is a full-time job. So politics is why when there is a big conference, even if there are 3 awesome talks, but they come from the same company, they cannot accept all the talks because then people will say, oh, we are manipulated by this company. So one talk will be rejected but just because there are already 2 talks from the same, or 1 talk from the same company. And on the other hand, when a company is known enough and they just submit 1 paper, they don't need to worry because they know their paper will be accepted because otherwise they can even maybe sue the conference. Politics is boring. Some people are ready to waste their whole life on that. I personally think better yell at clouds, but again, maybe you'll be a very good manipulator, I was about to say. And again, politics is very important. We'll see later, there's no metrics in security. There's no easy metrics in security. So defense is a political problem. Promotions. Promotions is what a lot of people want. More money and a shiny title. And a lot of companies, I mean, everybody knows that or assume that. People even tell me, hey, do that, it's better for promo. And I'm like, well, no. And they just assume I will bite the bait. And it makes sense because there are so many people who think. So again, I'm not here just to say my opinion. Maybe you totally disagree with me. But on the other hand, because companies know that, usually they're like, okay, you can be a manager. So first it's like, you've been a manager for 5 years, but you still didn't receive the title upgrade or the new money. That's a standard practice in companies. And then there is the, okay, yeah, somehow, okay, maybe we feel guilty. Now you could be a manager, but you need to do that on top of what your normal manager expectation. So there is often some kind of manipulation. And then, because there is more bureaucracy or more politics, it depends on what you want, more money and title, then it's kind of golden handcuffs. And I've seen a few of the best managers I had, later they stepped down because they was like, they were suddenly they accepted to become a manager, but it was actually too boring, or no, so much constraint that they stepped down. So it's just one form of reward. And again, I'm probably a very bad example, but I never applied directly for a promotion in my career. And yet, my salary still got multiplied by 3 or 4. And I'm even more happy. I do stuff with POC or GTFO and other stuff that make me happy more than having more bureaucracy and more politics and having to fill Excel spreadsheet all the time. I can still do reverse engineering. So my conclusion about this part of the jobs and all the problems that first, there's no perfect and permanent job, and especially there's no stable situation. You could have a very nice situation, and suddenly there's a change of manager. You're in the same team, the same position, same responsibilities, but the new manager, or there's a different schedule, or and suddenly it turns into hell. Just because the new manager is totally insecure, and the previous manager was a leader who was happy to do stuff together and who trusts you, and suddenly there's a new manager who just wants to goes up in the rank and use the subordinates to take advantage and come up with fake metrics. That happened to me several times in my career. So there's no perfect situation or job, and especially there's no stable situation. Same for your relation at home. At home, was married 20 years. I'm still married 20 years. You think you get married and you're in love and everything is fine. Suddenly there's a change of situation, and suddenly you need to reestablish and reevaluate everything. Another thing is especially, I mean, as loose as, even if the company is quite small, two nearby teams, one could be, it could be heaven and the other could be hell. And I heard that several times in my career. People say, we discuss together, it's like, we don't feel like we work in the same company. So if you think, I'm going to apply to this company because it's awesome, like Gedalita, for example, maybe there's one team that is awesome, I'm not going to name it, and there's one team just sitting at next to them that is awful. Hypothetical, of course, but it happens. And again, it happened in several of my employers. Oh yeah, there's another thing. Meetings. Meetings are very good. So a meeting is a good political shit show where the guy with the microphone takes his time to show off and everything, exactly like me now. And I use it a lot. So if you have CTF flags to prepare, use these meetings to doze off and just to think about your binary structure. It's excellent. Source of motivation, it's like taking a shower. It's really worth it. Oops, I didn't say that. Again, what I said now is not be a rebel, be an asshole, and whatever. I think the obvious is that hard work pays. And that's what I believe, that at least by doing a few more hash collisions at home, maybe when there will be the new thing, I will be ready. It's just honing your skills and having fun. And how many times did you try? My rule of thumb is that if you can easily estimate how many times you try something, it's probably not enough. If it hurts, how many times did you try doing hash collisions? Oh, wait. And if suddenly it's like very painful to even try to estimate, then you probably did good. And when you know, oh yeah, I tried it 10 times or 100 times, you probably did something that your manager will say, good job. But if you tried countless of times and it's really your playground and you had fun, then it's something that unknown people will come to you years later and say, good job. That's a different scale. And if you're just thinking, oh, I did that a lot of times, and then you can say you can actually evaluate it easily, you could have tried harder. I mean, I'm not saying you should. But there maybe find something where you're willing to have fun every weekend or all the time, you mean? So now a bit about job interviews. Again, one of my friends, only one job interview. I wish I was that lucky. Job interviews is a weird filtering ceremony, full of weird rituals. So I had this psychological test. I had this personality test, this stupid math test. It's weird, and sometimes it's HR that is imposing that. And even the people, the good technical people behind it, they can't do anything. It's like the ritual of initiation for this company totally sucks. Everyone is like this, but you have to go through. I'm not saying it's worth investigating, but I think job interviews in general, have a lot of impact in your life because finding the good job is great. And failing at the job you think it was good is suck. So basically, apply to get more experience so that you get more and more comfortable. Now there is a sad truth about me with interviews. Every time I wanted the job, I prepared for it, I failed. And every time I just went and I thought, let's have a free lunch and talk with interesting people, I got the job. Like my whole career. So I'm not saying, I mean, again, it's a bit, I will say, oh yeah. So the biggest irony is I will go through job interviews next week and the following weeks. Like really. This weekend I will prepare with Tangled Web, pentester interviews. This is pure coincidence, but it's actually funny that I'm living through that by a pure coincidence, and I will have to go through job interviews next week and the following week. I mean, that's totally coincidental. So basically, First, as I said, be yourself, be honest. Not knowing is fine, and when you say I don't know that, then if the interviewer is a decent person, not an asshole, but they will just use this knowledge of you not knowing by trying to get another way to prove your knowledge. So, and again, if it's a big employer, they probably have a more open position than you can imagine, or that are even listed publicly. So by saying, I don't know this, they say, actually, there is this position that you didn't know, but by saying, I don't know, maybe you could succeed in getting that one. Don't be too silent, because silence has too many interpretations. So just, even if you're stuck, just explain your thinking. And again, it's totally normal to be nervous. There's no need to apologize, to over-apologize for that. So just think of an interview as a normal conversation with an expert. I mean, once you bypass the HR rituals, just think of it of a normal conversation with an expert who's giving you some time to listen to you and probably prepared some tests for you. So you like, thank you for the test. Now let's have a time and let's discuss together about technical stuff. That's the right approach. But not all employers are worth it, and some interviewers are just assholes. So that happens, and in this case, sorry. Sometimes it's crazy how they're like arrogant, totally arrogant. And okay, so what you want to first, of course, you may discuss about salary advantages or something. Sometimes the interviewers cannot even discuss about salary. They don't know in advance. It will be fit in some algorithm, and then at the end you will have one offer with the salary, and whether you accept it or not, and there's no discussion, that happens. But sometimes it's also good for you to debug potential problems in your future employer. So first, is the person giving you orders the person you would expect? Because if you're under PR or marketing, I mean, if your boss is the head of marketing, it's not going to end well. I mean, if you're a technical person. Or if the person who's giving you orders is not responsible for you. So like if you cannot say, hey, I'm not happy with that manager, then this person can throw whatever shit they want down, and they will not have any bad ratings. So then this situation never goes well. So it's happened in several of my employers, permanently or temporarily, but it never goes well. So people all abuse that, and it's like, hey, this guy is actually my slave. I can send whatever, he has to do it, and he cannot complain because he has to complain with his actual manager in the org. Every time. So double check that. And then also try to double check if there is weirdness. One of my employer was using simultaneously CVS, SVN, Git, Mercurial, Perforce on different projects related together. When you hear that, maybe organization is not your strength. Or once I was applying for a remote job, and it's very important to have a very good communication with the remote manager, right? And the remote manager was not responding to emails. So like, maybe not. So again, your interview is you wanting a job, but also use it to try and remove the landmines in front of you, you know? Sometimes it really goes bad, and you should, yeah, with experience, you will probably have some interest to try to detect that early. And of course, I mean, I think, fuck unpaid internship. It's a good, oh, I have a job, so the company, but if you think that you're using your strength and your effort and not be paid, it's like slavery, and people still value that. Yeah, I would punch someone who said unpaid internship. Who? Social media, because I heard some people who said their personal goal was to reach this amount of followers or something. A friend of mine, he recently created a fake profile on LinkedIn with a prestigious school that he never attended or anything. LinkedIn automatically suggested a lot, add all, and then add, and within a few weeks, he had more than 500 followers. Followers is when you speak to someone about something, a lot of unknown people will disturb you. There's no goal in that. I've known some of the people I really like have very few followers, and they deserve a lot more. So the idea to think, oh, my goal is to reach this amount of followers, what for? If you just behave as an RSS feed, like you just retweet and post everything, you will have a lot of followers. But in the end, you will realize they don't follow for what you create, for what you like. They just follow you for being a bot. And you will have followers because social media is used for an information stream and fun. But this is not people following you. And social media is a huge echo chamber, so always insisting on the top 10. And sometimes, oh, this person sucks at security, and everybody goes against that person. Basically, you're drawn into an ocean of bullshit, and it's also very bad to focus. And I now know more and more people who have problem to actually disconnect. When I tell my colleagues that on holidays I don't have an electronic device with me, they just can't believe me. I just can't say that anymore. My brother, when we go on holidays, we're in the mountains, I'm playing with the kids, and he's looking for a signal. People really can have an anxiety of having an empty battery. And if you have that, or if you start to have that, you should change, especially because social media is very good to get diluted. There is such an endless stream of interesting stuff, fun stuff, and bullshit that you lose yourself in it. And then you don't remember, you don't define yourself anymore. So by disconnecting more, you understand yourself more, I think. But you know, I'm old-fashioned, I belong in a museum. And again, I think that being bored, I think it's good that my kids, it's, when I see like waiting at the train, Deutsche Bahn, Verspätung, you have 1 hour to wait, I think it's opportunity. Opportunity to find something. There's probably an idea floating somewhere, a hash collision pattern somewhere, a new flag, whatever. Find it. Then you can turn any bored moment into personal creativity. And again, very interesting, very important to regularly stay focused on what you think, so even debugging in toilets, why not? And being disconnected, because that's time in the end for yourself. Another thing, a friend of mine recently had a paper rejected at a conference. And then she wanted to flip the table, as everyone should. And actually, I did that, I think, once I was rejected at CCC, and I was pissed off, and fuck it, and whatever, and I hate everyone, and whatever. But then, okay, do that once. And then you realize that, and suddenly the talk is accepted 1 week later. Oh, fuck, what? It's exactly what happened to me. So basically, you gain experience, even if the project has been canceled, but you reach some point, and at that moment, it's still fresh in your head. So really, everyone hates to write reports. That's why it's better if you get better at writing reports, because the more comfortable you are with it, well, the less painful it will be. And you just write down stuff you learned for yourself, because your hierarchy, the conference may have rejected your talk, your project, whatever, but you were the initial, the source of it. And now it's time to write down when it's still fresh. And I'm saying that because after some years, you completely forgot what you even taught to other people. So I gave trainings in Japan to I gave trainings to some teams. Some years later, I had forgotten what I have taught to other people. And that's why I started my project of posters and everything, for me to store my knowledge in a useful way to me. And then I share with people, and it was actually useful to other people too. So again, it's for yourself. Even if everyone pretends it's not important for the company anymore, it's for you. And again, that's why I brought this brain teaser, which is a labyrinth inside. You never know how close you are from succeeding. And if you store it pretty well, and then you take it back, maybe you are actually very close to the end. So this extra effort, even though it's painful and you've been rejected and it sucks, is actually probably the best thing, because you were the author, and that way you have the least loss from your project. Yeah, some advice. So now not with just advice in general. So again, how to be the best at anything or at something. Well, there's only one trick, as I mentioned earlier: be the author. When people ask me, are you good at something? It's like, I know a little, but I have no idea how much the author or the founder of this knows. So, you know, if the scale is from 0 to 10, I rate myself 1, because I have no idea where 10 is. And I just know that I'm not 0. So create your own thing. So to create your own thing is just do something long enough, And after doing something repeatedly, then you see, hey, I could automate that or anything. Just try to fill the gap. And again, something very important. When you have an idea, don't expect even your friends to understand because you have this idea and it was born here and not in someone else's brain. So when I started to say, oh, I'm going to craft files with weird structures, the initial reactions of my colleagues were negative because no one did that. And if no one did that, it's like at the beginning it's crazy. It's crazy in a negative way. It's like no one did that, therefore no one needs it, therefore it's useless. And I actually, for a year or so, I hesitated doing it. And I still thought it was a good idea. And I should have tried without overthinking about it too much. Because even if everyone around me was telling me it's a bad idea because it doesn't exist. I mean, no one does that, so why would you? And again, try. Because no one can see what you see. And on top of that, if you just speak about something and all you did was speaking, and you expect people to work on your idea, if you're not doing anything for it, no one will get any motivation. So there are plenty of super projects, and someone says, hey, let's do this. And they're like, actually, the others are just giving words, and they expect the other people to code, which will never work. And again, at some point, initially, your idea may be extremely small, and eventually, by working on it, it will become better. So, and of course, your attitude, trust is the most important. If your idea sucks, be the first one to admit it. Actually, I think this is the last point. No. Reverse psychology sometimes works. Sometimes nothing works better than someone, either your best friend or your biggest enemy, saying, hey, you'll never succeed. Or sometimes another thing is that making a bet or a commitment. So doing stuff for Poker GTFO, in my case, helped a lot to get some things done, because otherwise I would never commit myself to do that. So sometimes it's when your manager says, this is the worst idea I've ever heard, I'll prove it. Typical example. And again, if it's your own idea, you have nothing to lose, especially because no one cares about this idea. So, but don't say, do it like an American advertisement, but just say, let's try, let's have fun, or maybe, oh, fuck it. And you know, if you think about it too much, sometimes it adds a lot more weight, and then it becomes more scary. And again, when you do something, I have a lot of projects and people that I see around me, and people, it's actually a shitty idea from the beginning. And they just try, it's a dead horse already, and they try to resurrect the horse, and they just try to say this is the best horse ever. And the idea was shitty from the beginning, but they should have been the person saying themselves, I mean, kill your children early when they are bad. I'm a parent of 3, so don't say that. But really be honest, especially when, because it's a waste of time to spend, how to say? It's a waste of time if everyone actually thinks it's bad. So once I was working on a project, and after some time, people just let me work on it, and after some time they say, it's actually suck. And then I was like, why did I spend some time working on that? You should have told me earlier. And when I had a project a few years ago, I really went to a lot of colleagues and told me, is it duplicate? Is it stupid? Please tell me now, so that I can kill it early before I waste my time on it. So again, truth is hard to embrace, but worth embracing. It's okay. It's okay. It's really important that if you want to be trusted, you kill your project first by asking directly the honest question. And one of my managers was extremely direct. It felt like I was on a boxing match when I was in meeting with him. But if you survive the 3-minute bout, then you have a great project. So actually, I prefer this kind of totally honest and direct managers with technical background rather than someone saying, yeah, this is great, and after a quarter, it's like, well, actually, no one cares. But maybe it's just me. And again, very often, people say, oh, lots of people probably come to you, and how can I start hacking? Start hacking? Hack something? And maybe if they just keep asking that, probably they don't really want in the end, because when you see a child wanting to play, he's already playing, or she is already playing. So, and if you still hate something after you try, so I remember when I started the reverse engineering, I was thinking, I should try to study rootkits, I should try to study this and that, and in the end, never. And now I'm very honest that if something, it's like, no. I'm dropping it very early because I know the motivation is not there. So it's very important. People say, you're not innovative, you're not exploring new stuff. I am already, but I already know my playground. So be honest with yourself. And if you keep asking yourself, how can I, should I, then probably you don't. You try something else. Another thing is that you cannot, the free time, it's like people ask me, how do I have the time? So when we had our second child, I set up a netbook. And this netbook, it was always on the text editor. And because when you're without kids, you think you have you think you don't have time, but you actually have all the time in the world. And when you have the kids, just having 30 seconds of free time is awesome. And so basically that's why the netbook was an inaccessible place for the kids. And I would come, and with 30 seconds, I would type one more line of code, or maybe less. And that way I could add up, because basically, for 2 years, I couldn't touch a keyboard. So suddenly you discover really what is free time. Or there is some posters I did with my son asleep, so during the night, and typing. So he's asleep here, and I'm typing with one finger and hoping that he doesn't wake up. But at the end of the night, he slept, and your work is finished. And anyway, there's no way I could sleep. So this is a different version of this drawing, but free time is something you can find if you really want to. And another thing in relations, whether it's with your wife, girlfriend, or with your managers and everything, is like everyone has different expectations. So they say that for love, there are 5 versions. Some people want some time, some people want some gifts, some people want some contact. Everyone has their different expectations. It's like managers and people. Some people say, hey, this is good for promo, and me, I prefer honesty and trust. So again, wherever you want, whenever you want with someone, you have to understand that a good relation is about understanding what the others want, and it's not about controlling the others, it's not being controlled. You shouldn't be controlled, and you shouldn't control the other. So it's balance. It's about balance and not control the others, because then people will live. Another thing I wanted to talk, sorry, it's very monotonous, no one talks anymore at all. I mean, never ever talked. How it should work, the myth of a perfect life. So they say that the reason for being is when you have all the things beautiful aligned. So money, passion, talent, and usefulness is like your stuff in life. But I think that's an unrealistic model. It's like a beautiful utopia for a Hollywood movie. But in practice, even though there is something you like, suddenly there is some external constraint of a customer, of a time, of whatever, of an accident in life, and suddenly it doesn't work that well. So basically, I think it's more like this. Usefulness is optional, and some people have crappy jobs as long as they have their passion at home. So I know some friends who do reverse engineering, and this is not their main job at all, and they keep their main job actually very secret, because it's totally unrelated. And they have a totally different job, which is giving them money. And then at home, they have their passion. They don't need to be good at that. They just need to be happy. And their job, being useful, that's secondary. It can be your balance too. And hopefully, sometimes there's overlap of passion and money. But very often, there are external constraints that suddenly turn that into something annoying. As I said, no job situation is constant, is always good. So now, don't worry, what could go wrong? Because most mistakes can be undone, so there's no reason to worry. What do you think could be the worst mistake, in your opinion, in life? With this very meta talk that was supposed to be about InfoSec, what is the worst mistake what someone can do in life?
Making no mistakes.
Sorry?
Making no mistakes.
Attending this talk? Making no mistakes? Yeah, doing nothing? Well, no, I think there's worse. The biggest mistake is, so there's this stuff, and at the end she says, seriously, just reproduce. And we all had, or most of us probably had some pressure from the parents to say, hey, give us grandchildren. And the worst thing I've seen in my life was when some people, they have the bad relation, and they just thought, hey, let's get married, maybe it will improve things. And then they say, hey, let's get married, let's have kids, maybe it will improve things, because it goes worse. And I know someone who killed his kids after committing suicide. I know someone who kidnapped her child to move to her own home country. The worst behavior is when there are kids in the middle because it makes everything harder, and then the kids always suffer. And that's something you cannot undo. Having kids is hard. You cannot be ready. I mean, there are even comics for that. The first mistake is believing you're ready. I have 3 kids. It's not the worst. It's not the easiest either. It makes everything hard. We couldn't expect to have full nights for 6 years. Because after the first kid was old enough, there was a second child and everything. So if you can sleep 6 hours in a row, we couldn't have that for many years. So basically, having kids can be awesome, but it makes everything harder. And in this case, if you're not happy already with your half, then it will just make things worse, and then really bad things happen. So I just think the rest, you can still change your job, you can still relearn PHP and these kind of things. But the thing you cannot undo is having kids, and then if you have kids in a bad environment, that's the worst. And just if I made you very depressed, what is the death that is the least supposed to happen? Terrorist accident, right? Turns out, in the attack in Paris, my cousin was killed by the terrorist accident. You know, the stuff that in practice doesn't happen. I wanted to die. I lost the interest in life. And I was reading, why are we living? And then I came back when I just thought, seriously, Monkey Island, death is just the last action in your game, and you can control all the actions until then. And so death can come, but if death is a problem for you and you just keep wondering what's the point in living, just think that every time, anyway, this will be your last action, and this is what saved me. This is your last action, and until that point, you control most of the things. So what do you want that there is in your memory dump before exit process is called? Now let's talk at last a bit about InfoSec. And I think there's something you could improve in InfoSec. InfoSec lacks honesty, I think. I really appreciate trust as a first value. And I know that honesty is optional to make money, but seriously. So my rant against InfoSec is, first, there's no easy InfoSec metric, security metric. So you probably know this from KiwiCon. Hackers don't give a shit about your plans, about the project, about your budget, and everything. So defense is very political because security doesn't have easy metrics. And a lot of people game the system. First way, brag about how good you are in security. Then there is a problem. Wow, there's a spike on the graph. Oh, if it's a bootkit and it cannot be detected, ignore it. If it's detected, then show how fast you reacted. Brag that how much you saved if you could show how much money you saved. Just a quick fix. And rinse and repeat. You saved X money and you did your job. InfoSec live, first live of InfoSec. The other one, observe and not understand nor solve any problem. So you have some data about something. Something is out, a new attack, a new malware, botnet. You take your data, you shake it, until there is something impressive. You can roll attribution dice. And then you pretend in a conference that you completely understand the problem. And just by going in a conference, then you say, my paper was accepted at conference, therefore, international impact. And actual impact on anything, any source, anywhere, 0. Yeah, I know it's a rant, but yeah, I'm old, you know. The fake defense research. Start something, the thing I said about project that should be killed early. Start something, get some result, but with no practical impact, like, okay, your machine learning can unpack UPX, whoa. And you check the results, you bullshit your way. Sometimes you have to publish a minimal source or useless binary that just works on Hello World. And because it was accepted in the conference, and you all did that just to be accepted in the conference, then you conclude it's a success. That's a problem with conference. I was in a conference committee, program committee before. I think there's a problem where people just do something so that it's accepted at conference, and by being accepted at the international conference, they claim international visibility and efficiency or something. And it's a self-feeding problem. Great visibility for you, actual impact, null. Fake attacks. You find maybe accidentally a vulnerability. It's not necessarily new, but you're the first one to put a logo and website on it. Understanding is not required. You applied to a conference again. You shared as few details as possible. You fill a whole hour with details about stuff, but you actually probably show that you actually don't even understand what really happened. Optionally, you publish the minimal source because you have to be accepted at the conference. And again, conclude it's an international success. Repeat. Actual impact, null. So I wish for I wish for more honest talks. So first, be honest with your results, with the impact of them. Mention previous art. There are so many talks that just pretend you did something totally new. And also, stop pretending that wins are instant, because then media just said, at Pwn to own, Chrome was hacked in 20 seconds by this group. What the fuck? What does that mean? It's totally useless, but just if the talks were saying, we started this research at this moment, we failed this, we did that, then maybe the media would also start to think, oh, it looks hard, actually. Or, you know, if enough people were doing that, then at least the pretending instant wins would stop. So it's up to you. Don't act surprised when your credibility is gone. And I think because people keep doing that, eventually there will be a loss of trust of the whole InfoSec because of hype, because of supposedly instant hack, because of crappy attribution. So prove me wrong. And yeah, what kind of player are you? Again, he just gamed the system, and people forgave him, but people don't forget that he used his hand, the hand of God. Yeah, just it's so unrated. It's sort of an easy way to hone your pwning skills is CTF, but the problem for me with CTF is that it focuses on a few skills and stuff that is quickly and doable. So that can be done within the time of the CTF and everything. And I prefer when Mark Stevens, for the Pwnie Award, when Mark Stevens says, can you collide two PDFs with this condition? I was like, I have no idea. It seems impossible for me, but at the moment, I don't have any proof that it's possible. And it took weeks. And I prefer that because, again, by rule, a CTF cannot have this. This is an unknown problem, and we don't know the solution. So I think it's great, but I think it also matches the skills expected in a pen test. You have to do something within a few days, and you look at the low-hanging fruit. So too many people, I think, focus on CTF. I mean, working on CTF is perfectly fine, but there is a lot more to InfoSec. And CTF, what annoys me is that it celebrates the guy with the points, the breaker, not. And the write-ups are just about breaking the stuff, not, again, the process of, because there was some research sometimes on some of the most interesting flags. And there is no write-up of what was, or there are very few talks, too few talks about what was required to create these flags. So fetishing, as Mario says, fetishing the breaker, the bug, and not the tedious work of the maker gives a wrong idea of InfoSec. It's really matching work as CTF, but there is a lot more work in InfoSec in general. Sorry for the time. I mean, yeah, it's been 3 hours or something. Conclusion. There's no shortcut, really. There's no point in trying to fully imitate someone else. You're very different from anyone else. And try different things. Oh, yeah, one thing we did, so we were in Japan with my kids. And usually, I'm a bit restrictive. And in here, I said, you can eat and order everything you want, but you shouldn't order the same thing twice. And after 3 days, they had tried everything. And as soon as they see something they don't know, they try it because they knew they can. And at least in a week, they have like tasted, I would say, like everything because they really tried. Again, sometimes being creative is about forcing yourself not to do the same thing again. Hopefully, you don't make the same mistakes, or maybe you just feel better when you do your own, or you just think I'm an idiot and you're going to throw me outside the window now. It's up to you. Honestly, all this thing is scary initially. It's scary to try stuff and to think what they, again, a bit like at school, what will be happen? They will laugh at me. What if I fail, etc. And sometimes it's really because the job is very boring, so that you suddenly think, I have to create something new, because otherwise my life will suck much longer. But maybe you need experience for that. Yeah, I think it's way too long. At last, thank you for listening, and if you have any feedback, questions.